Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
You guys are on.
Oh, sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm used to AfterBuzz TV. I'm not used to that intro. Thank you for joining us here for Popcorn Talk for the watch-along of V For Vendetta.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember the 5th of November, where we sat here and watched this movie.
It's also when Doc Brown invented the flux capacitor.
It is. It's a very important date
It's an amazing date.
in history. We are using, this looks like the Blacklist Special Edition I got from the local library, because I think that's the most V For Vendetta thing I could do other than just steal a copy.
Sure.
So, like, the second most V For Vendetta thing I can do. And before I push play, I, of course, am Steve Kaufmann. I'm at Steve Kaufmann, Kaufmann. You can tweet along with me. We're going to have a good time. But I'm not alone. Starting to my left.
Hey, I'm Alan Kistler. I'm a comic book historian and consulting geek. You'll see me later today on the Marvel Movie News podcast, and I'm the author of Doctor Who: A History and the unofficial Game of Thrones cookbook. You can find me on Twitter at Kistler, and my podcast is Crazy Sexy Geeks.
And to my right.
Hey, I just like movies. Like, my name is Bill. No. After those credentials, I was like, oh, hey, I don't have any of those things for you to go to. I'm at BillPosley.com and at Bill Posley on Twitter. My affiliation with this movie is that this is when anybody asks me what my favorite movie is, I look at them like, why would you ever ask me that question?
It's such a solid movie.
And then I say, if I have to right now, gun to my head, I'm going to say it's V For Vendetta. I love it so much. When I first saw it, I saw it with my brother. My little brother, he came out and visited me. We sat and watched it together. And up until that point, we were estranged from each other due to an incident that happened. And V For Vendetta is what brought us back together.
This is also my favorite. It's between this and Casablanca when people, gun to your head, ask
Really?
what your favorite film is. Yes,
That's
Casablanca.
That's an interesting range. Well, let's get
Yeah,
the show started.
I think that's a good place. And we are pushing play.
All right, wait. You guys got to do the countdown with the audience.
Oh, sorry.
Because for those who will be listening to
Yes,
this later.
many apologies. So I just
Jumping the gun here, man.
The worst.
All right, guys.
All right.
So you're at 0000 on the DVD of V For Vendetta.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And Sizzler Kistler, make your mic a little bit more level with your mouth so we can hear you.
Alrighty.
There we go.
All right.
Yeah.
We're counting down in 5.
And you play on go. So it's 5,
All right.
4, 3, 2, 1, go.
We're going on go. Thank you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Here we are.
Nice. Right away, I'm going to say I love that they went black and white.
For this intro
Yes.
scene.
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and open up the conversation to that. I love it.
Oh, back when DC comic movies were great. I have a lot of problems with DC comic movies recently.
Yeah, so this is Vertigo because that's where it got eventually folded into. Originally, when this was printed, there was no Vertigo comics. This was actually printed in the UK under Quality Communications as a feature of an anthology series. And then DC collected that, created its own V For Vendetta series. They went up to about 6 issues, and the next several issues were new material that closed the story and finished it.
Yeah. And now, I just love this opening, too, that he's just so small. He's so small in relation to the world and what he becomes. Guy Fawkes, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, we don't have... am I the only one not having
Nope,
audio?
I don't have any
I
audio.
Okay,
have
we don't
zero
have
audio. I thought that was part of it. I thought we were just supposed to talk about what's going on.
We're dubbing in the dialogue.
Yeah.
So this is the famous gunpowder treason and plot, which occurred on November 5th, and
I mean, I don't think we ever really talk about it. Like, Guy Fawkes is a dick.
It's not an American thing to really talk
Yeah,
about.
yeah. I think we just don't like they were right for stopping Guy Fawkes from doing that. I don't think anyone's ever addressed that issue in this whole thing.
He is a terrorist.
He's a terrorist. Dude.
Yes.
We don't know if he's a good dude.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and yet they celebrate him with bonfires annually, and little Guy Fawkes dolls that get burned, and spare the guy a penny.
Yeah, and he wasn't really a patriot, or even like a democracy fighter by any stretch.
Yeah.
But that said, I love this movie and everything this movie stands for.
No.
but, like,
V
we're
is.
talking about Guy Fawkes.
We're just talking about Guy Fawkes.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
exactly.
the amount of celebration that he gets is just, I don't know if it's warranted, right? I mean, you just think like, oh, okay, he was taking down a terrible government, but at the same time, like, was he a good dad? You know, like, like what, like Steve Jobs. Yeah, he did some stuff, but I think we've all learned recently that he wasn't a good father.
Would you have a beer with him? Is what
Yeah,
you're saying.
that's what I'm saying.
Would you have a beer with Guy Fawkes? The answer is probably not.
So already we have here a couple changes from the comics, because in the comics, the voice of fate, so to speak, is over the radio. It's not a television show. And, I mean, that's because the comics, it was made in the 80s,
Yeah.
they came out in the 90s, and they were trying to go for almost a timeless feel of a mix of time eras. It didn't necessarily belong to one time era. Whereas here, we have a movie that was made in the 21st century, and was very specifically said to be in the future.
This could have been a cool little podcast, though.
That it would have just been.
We could put him on a little podcast.
It would be in a world where there is media that you can watch TV.
Yeah.
But he actually just has a top-rated podcast. Well, he would have the top-rated podcast because they would own its state-run
Like
media.
more than even the anything Kevin Smith does. This
If
is
you had
Yes.
to, if
bigger
you had
than
to
that.
pick between
Yeah.
Limbaugh, O'Reilly, and Glenn Beck, who is this guy to you? I know we can all see he's a combination of all three, but if he was one of those three.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this is more Glenn Beck.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, he's more politically involved.
He's also because Glenn Beck has that sort of soft-spoken. Look, I'm just being reasonable with you here, folks. Whereas Rush Limbaugh constantly acts like he's about to have a heart attack.
See, that's what I feel like. Mine's Limbaugh. I feel like this guy's
Okay.
always like screaming.
All right.
Also,
Are we-
the take up
So-
from the comic as well is that she is not a prostitute in this film.
Right. In the
In
comic,
earlier drafts of this film, she was still a prostitute.
Wait, she's not? Okay. That's weird. Okay. I didn't notice that the whole movie. I thought that she was a hooker at night and worked at a news station during the day, which during these trying times you might have to do. Oh, there we go.
So, yeah, in the original comic, this was her trying out prostitution, and on her very first night, fingermen, part of a sting operation, caught her and were about to rape her.
No worries. And then, but like literally, the dialogue didn't change because I've read the earlier drafts of the script where she was still trying like it was still ripped from the comic, and they didn't change any of this.
Yeah.
It was just where she was going was changed to be with Stephen Fry. Oh, this wouldn't be the slowest. Oh, this movie.
Spoil the child.
Oh, Hugo Weaving.
Now I've read a lot of places that James McTeigue has said that there are shots that weren't shot with Hugo Weaving that are in the movie.
Right,
Wow.
because originally James Purfoy was cast as this, and some of you know James Purfoy from Solomon Kane, A Knight's Tale, John Carter, The Following, most recently perhaps, and the show episodes, and he left production after 6 weeks, and so they reshot some of his stuff, but some of his stuff they kept in.
Yeah.
And Hugo Weaving just voice dubbed over it because he was voice dubbing his own stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I've read because it's actually him on set. that they mic'd him under the mask and it just didn't sound right.
Exactly.
That it made more sense to VO because the lips don't move.
And to take out the hollow, echoey sound.
That too. Like, there were
Yeah.
a lot of... But he was still there, presumably the majority of the time. But there... At some point, James Purfoy, you'll see him too. But we just don't know.
I heard earlier, even in earlier drafts, that they were thinking about casting Dennis Rodman. No.
Sure.
How funny that would have been.
I'm not going to lie, I would watch that version of V. Because you'd have to.
We're like, I remember Double Team and Simon when he had to play the action hero. Yeah. Oh, it's my favorite speech.
This is the one right here. Like... Yeah.
Vendetta.
So many V words. But here we are. We're not even 8 minutes in, and it's like, oh, this guy wants to change the world.
That's actually an excellent point. There is so much... Talk about show, don't tell. Like, there's so much they establish very early. You know exactly what V's about, for the most part. You know his apparent mission statement. You know Evey's deal in this world.
You know it's a totalitarian, dystopian... Like, you know so much in 7.5 minutes.
Yeah, it's wonderful direction. And on Evey, so we've got, as he just pointed out, that you can break down her name to the letters E-V. And then there's also V, as we see in this movie, is constantly associated with the number 5, being the Roman numeral for 5. So E is the fifth letter of the alphabet. And V stands for 5 in Latin. And
The 5th of November.
And then also Y, if you're taking all the letters from EV, Y is the 25th letter in the alphabet, or 5 squared.
And also his chin looks like a V.
Yes.
The not numbers based. It's like the mask is literally a V chin.
This was one of my favorite parts of the comic. This was... In the comic, this was maybe halfway through the series.
And it was... And it wasn't Bailey. It wasn't the Bailey. It was something else in the comic.
You're right. At that point, he was blowing up towers that belonged to the bases.
Not anymore.
And you've got the Lady Justice above the Old Bailey is not blindfolded.
Well, the whole idea...
Yeah, I always like that image of this is a Lady Justice that V can look in the eye and say, "You have betrayed us."
Well, also the idea of blind justice was initially a joke.
Right.
Because that's what justice used to look like. It was just a lady with a scale who wasn't blind. It wasn't until like satirists made her blind, and then that just caught on as a thing. There.
I mean, one thing we'll get into later in this movie, that this is a world where so much culture and art has been outlawed. So it's actually, incredibly remarkable to suddenly hear music.
I was hearing it for the first time, yeah. I was in Romania post the Cold War, like in 2007. They'd only been free for about 17 years, And just talking to some of them about being like, the first time they heard the Beatles was in '92.
What?
Yeah, I mean,
well, music is constantly associated with revolution. You've got during the Cold War, when people were protesting the Berlin Wall, they were rocking out to American rock and roll.
Yeah.
But
to sneak in Thriller, you know what I mean, or whatever. It's crazy.
So what you're saying is they could have had a Michael Jackson song instead of
the way that it's just like Prince in the first Batman.
It could have been Say with Michael and Paul.
Yeah.
Or the girl's mine. I'd like to see a little. Don't. I just write. I like to remember them as friends.
This is a really great modernization of
The War Room.
The War Room,
Yeah.
and also the 5 divisions of the government that were seen in the comic.
Yeah.
And John Hurt, man.
Oh man. Everyone talks about how Hugo Weaving gets to be in everything cool, but you forget about John Hurt.
Yeah.
John Hurt's in this. He was in Harry Potter.
He's an alien.
He's an alien. He was the War Doctor.
Yeah.
He gets to be a lot of cool stuff too.
Yeah, he's great.
Stephen Rea, my favorite vampire from Interview with the Vampire.
And also The Crying Game. I mean, just to watch.
Yeah.
See, what I always found so interesting about this particular thing is he high enough up to be in that room? Do you know what I mean when I'm saying that? Like, I always was like, he may be the head of, like, I just feel like
he's essentially the head of Scotland Yard.
Right.
Yeah, he's the head of the detectives.
And it feels like, I guess it feels, we never address it, it feels like he has a regular office and is a beat cop. Nobody ever comes.
Of the others here,
Right.
he is definitely the lowest on the rung.
Right.
Which is weird, lower than the propaganda guy.
But you would assume if you're the head of, Scotland Yard, you're not walking. You're not going to crime scenes and doing that as much.
No,
as
but it's such a weird case.
Yeah.
He's taking an interest. This is it's interesting to me because when I really first got into V for Vendetta in the 90s, it was by then already considered a pretty dated story.
Yes.
And even Alan Moore in the introduction talked about this is such a dated story. It's something that was written in reaction to Thatcher politics, and that there's a reason so many British writers were making dystopian future versions and stories in the late 1980s and early 90s because they thought, oh, it was going to turn out that way maybe. But then by the mid 90s, it just seemed dated and a thing of the past.
Well, because that was the idea that Thatcher politics would lead you to a dystopian future.
Right.
They turned out to be incorrect.
Right. Whereas 10 years later, this story found other
appropriate.
reasons to be
Yes.
really political and topical again.
And those are the reasons Alan Moore actually doesn't want to be involved. Like, took his name off the film.
Right.
Because those reasons weren't very British.
Like, do you see? All right, I
It's
know we're talking
Lestrade.
about, but like, do you? I mean, I feel like they're equal partners.
I think that says more about Finch's character than the hierarchy.
That's just how Finch does stuff.
Yeah.
He could sit in an ivory tower and delegate everything and be like everyone else.
Yeah, Finch is a blue-collar guy. Here is Stephen Fry, who, of course, Hugh and Laurie, Fry, a little bit of Fry and Laurie. He's been hosting QI for years. He's become known as like this cornerstone of education, enlightenment, and humor in England. So it's great to see him initially come off as this really creepy, pervy jerk of the establishment.
Also, because he does so much stuff in Britain, there wasn't even... Because I was looking to see if anyone from this film was in Los Angeles today. Nope.
No.
Nope. All British, or they live somewhere... Like, Hugo Weaving lives in New Zealand, I think. Like, I would have had to go pretty far down the IMDb.
Laser Lass is indeed banging.
It is indeed banging. I always love when they make shows within shows. It's so good.
Oh, me too.
One of my favorites is Major League 2, where Omar Epps' character is in movies where it's White Snake and Black Hammer.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, Natalie Portman might be the only non-Brit here.
And I always I mean, I guess we
But
don't.
she's
have...
kind of British. Like,
no, but like, how do we feel about her accent? I mean, did we ever feel like?
I'm on board.
Yeah, the person who was her dialect instructor also worked with Gwyneth.
She strikes me as the kind of person who, if she felt like she couldn't do the accent justice, wouldn't do the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not important.
Keira Knightley, I believe, was also up for this role.
She was. That would have been interesting. I'm not saying.
Yeah, but I also think I mean, are we close to Domino? How far out are we from Domino?
We're
in this
closer
movie?
to the second Pirates.
Yeah.
Whereas Keira Knightley would have been a. And I'm not saying Keira Knightley doesn't have the depth.
No, but
to play that. I just haven't seen it from
the
her.
reason why I was asking is because Natalie Portman. If you're looking at like the Dominoes or the Pirates, Keira Knightley has more of an ass-kicking persona, whereas like we need to see the growth of someone.
Yeah.
Who's meek and humbled, whereas you'd be like, I feel like Keira already has that inside of her.
Mm-hmm. Although you could say that about Natalie Portman too, because
So
of
another
Star Wars.
change here is V is much more of a hands-on terrorist in the movie. Like he's sort of just he sets up things and watches from a distance in the comic book, but here we actually make him a bit of an action hero.
Yeah, he's very active.
Yeah.
And the V from I want to be clear that the V from this film, and this film in general, is completely different from the graphic. Like, I do consider them two very different things.
Well, for one thing, and this is part of what Alan Moore had a problem with, the V in this movie is trying to free people. He's trying to get people to be free of this oppressive government. Whereas the V in the comic really wants to create anarchy. And you figure that out for yourself. Of
Yeah.
How good an idea or not that is.
And that's the beauty of anarchy, is they don't actually care.
Right. It's just govern yourself.
It's the nihilism of government. It's like, it doesn't matter.
You know what, kid?
All right, guys, this is the part that people ripped from the film and then overdubbed with whatever radical thing they feel.
Oh, yes.
This is part of the start of Anonymous taking over. Was that they could just find this video of a guy not with his lips not moving, wearing their mask, and make him say whatever they want. And Hugh Hoyland in the chat is mentioning it's been rumored the Wachowskis actually ghost-directed this.
It was their first assistant director.
Yeah,
Right.
Their assistant director on all the Matrix movies, James McTeigue, who sadly for being involved in such a great film. Because I think he was on the others and then got like bounced.
Yeah. And I looked it up. Domino and this came out both in 05.
Okay.
So, I mean, I feel like that would have been...
I didn't realize Domino was post-Pirates.
Yeah.
Where's my time? No, that's right. Pirates was like 03.
So he's talking about the 5th of November and what it means to him. There's also, you'll see in this movie, a couple times where the clock hands are making a V by going to 11:05, and of course 11:05 is November 5th.
The other thing is, like, I mean, I think in watching this, like, doesn't this just play on your want to just go off the reservation, go off the grid, train for 10 years in martial arts and, like, you know, low-level bomb making, and then just, like, kidnap George Bush, put him in a silo, and ask him what really happened on 9/11. I mean, like, it really brings all of that out on you.
Well,
you know?
especially when this came out, and that's part of why it got a lot of criticism, was, I mean, this is 2005. So September 11th happened just a little over 4 years before this. And, I mean, especially for me, like, I was in New York. I was living in New York when that happened, and I was down amid the rubble later, and seeing this in a theater with New York, with a New York audience, and with, around me, largely native New York friends or friends who've been living there for years, this had a really, really deep effect on us. What this was touching on. Of, yeah, a terrible thing happened, and then how have we reacted since then? And where have we gone wrong?
And it's ever since then there's been a shift in our society from people to ideals. That, like, we almost value ideals more than we value people in our current society.
Yeah, I hear you.
That like
feel. Well, I also think that like can there be? I mean, how bad does it have to get for this for like a call of action, right? So it's like it couldn't you couldn't stop this happening before this happened. You need this catastrophe for people to be fed up.
yeah.
And in the comic, V is a little more judgmental towards the people because he brings up, look, this didn't just happen.
Yeah, this is your fault. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This was you kept voting for the wrong people. You kept not listening to the information out there. You kept making the wrong decision. And he was saying, you know, like once or twice is a mistake. To do this repeatedly for years to build us up to this point is your fault. This is a crime. Now, this is one of the few times we really get V's ruthlessness in the movie.
That he's okay with all those people dying.
Right, like that.
But potentially all those people dying. Like he doesn't know that Finch is a good man and would value those people.
Yeah. Finch is also a little bit more heroic in this movie, or at least someone that we can relate to.
Very much so.
You know, in the comic, he's determined to stop V, and although he has doubts about his world a couple times, he never quite gets to the level that
he's
movie
very
Finch
much
does.
a cog in the wheel type.
Yeah.
So do we also feel like, you know,
I don't think this bomb was ever going to go. That's my thought. I think that's how they
are we watching a TMZ or are we watching a Fox News where, you know, like
well,
it's a Fox News if there was no other network. So if BBC were Fox News.
Yeah,
state-run media.
The director said this was to be like more an example of any of those networks gone wrong, whether you're talking about Fox News or Sky One News. Any network can become corrupt.
Although, when I tell people this is one of my favorite films, it's always interesting.
Best.
It's always
Great shot.
Best.
It's always very interesting because there's two types of people who love this film. There are just people who love action films.
Oh yeah, I forget that he just like knows how to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that bomb. I think that bomb was just gonna not go. Like it was just a timer and a bomb-looking thing.
If it were gonna go off, V has seriously underestimated the timing because he's still in the building.
Also, I think the public perception of him would be way different if he blew up a building with presumably innocent people.
No, I mean he's it's because they were coming to get her, right?
Yeah, he didn't know they were gonna be like.
He didn't underestimate it. He was surprised.
Yeah, he's genuinely surprised that they're there. He thought he was gonna get a clean break. So I wonder.
In the comic book, do we delve deeper into, other than the fact that it enhanced V's physical abilities?
Well, in the comic,
do they ever delve deeper into why he has this strength or this?
Well, see, in the comic, he doesn't really, because we so rarely see him in actual direct physical combat with anyone in the comic.
Got it.
There's no mention of any enhanced physicality. That's definitely added for the movie because they're making it more of an action film.
Yeah.
Some would say they're Americanizing it.
You can't deny that. Like, that's hard to deny.
No, this is definitely V through an American lens.
But as Americans, that's cool.
And also, it's again to keep it topical. If you were going to do it directly from the comic book, as Alan Moore would have liked,
it would have been ridiculous.
You would have to place it in an alternate version of 1995. It would not work in an alternate version of the 2020s.
Not at all.
As we have here.
I do always. You know what always did trip me out is like when I think about like the restrictions and limitations put on people. But whenever they cut to the bar, they're just smoking cigarettes and drinking and it feels like I always was like, wouldn't that be taken away? Like
I don't know. I think fascist governments sometimes are very clever with what little freedoms they'll give to sort of pacify the populace.
Yeah, like that's
and vices are a nice, safe way to pacify the populace.
Like a social currency.
Yeah. Whereas on the flip side, you would then also increase a hatred of other colors.
Well,
other ethnicities.
I also think part of it too is like I also would think things like especially cigarettes aren't like tobacco's not grown in England and things like that. But you'd be like
Right.
that's got to be hard to get in this specific time.
Also,
that
it seems like in this government is the only surviving one.
Yeah, we
Partially
really,
by their own design, but they keep saying England prevails. I think it's a matter of England became a the world superpower.
Yeah,
again.
we're really not sure what the rest of this world is like.
Yeah.
This Shadow Gallery, I loved it in the comic. I love how they interpret it here. It's this beautiful celebration of art and music and pastimes. That's another thing there, because we don't see anyone else really doing pastimes like chess, like little games, like
A Wurlitzer. Like that could be an MP3 player.
Right.
He wants it to be a Wurlitzer.
And there's a lot of the artwork on here that has to do with mythology, biblical themes,
butterflies.
metamorphosis,
right back there.
yes, rebirth.
Run, bitch, run! No, I'm just kidding.
All right, it's time for me to eat my egg in a basket.
That's right, which is indeed eaten in V for Vendetta.
And apparently not in the United Kingdom as much as V for Vendetta would have you believe.
It also...
I think it is. They call it toad in a hole. That's the only difference.
Did you make that up? I feel like you
No,
made
it's
that
toad
up.
in a hole. There is such a thing. I dated a British girl. It was toad in a hole.
So, it's also interesting, it gives you an insight into V's character that over the years he's been plotting terrorist actions and an overthrow of the government. He has also taken the time to acquire this collection very carefully and decorate his lair.
That would be enough for a clever man.
You know, he really, you can tell a lot about how he's prioritized things by how much he's decorated this place.
But like, dude, I can't even get my car cleaned, even though I've said that I would do it. To dedicate 10 years to a meticulous plan that you've slowly been cultivating over and over again to get amazing at these knives. To get it's like to just think about that. Like you'd have to go off. You'd have to go off the grid.
You'd have to completely go off the grid. You'd also have to have, and I like that they make him a certain level of superhuman. That his brain, we can explain his brain's also superhuman. We never see him sleep, per se. Like that, from a writer's standpoint, you can get away with a lot.
This is also another thing. I didn't know what else to do. That's not really a sentiment you hear from V in the comic.
Not at all.
You know, this
He was
is
a master planner in the comics.
right. He is a little bit more human in this movie, which again I think works for the version of the story that they're doing.
Yeah. And also what they set up visually up in literally the opening scenes of like, this is a guy doing his thing, this is a girl doing her thing, and they're gonna meet by what appears to be a chance, but there's no such thing.
The girl from Ipanema.
That's...
And the first reveal of V's hands. Which is fitting that we first see his burnt hands over a frying pan.
And apron. That apron is ridiculous.
Yeah, a little levity, right? It's been a little serious. And I always wonder, like, what's the peripheral vision of that mask? Like,
That's
not conducive to ass kicking.
I mean, that's something to ask about superhero masks in general.
Yeah. Once again, super senses, I guess, would be the right. I write all those things off as the purple pants theory. 'Cause I do the Heroes After show, and every week something like that comes up, where like they had clones that if you shoot them they just turn to ash because they're clones.
Right.
But they had like 10 clones and they were all wearing bombs, and when they got shot they turned to ash, including the bombs. And like all of us wanted to like really like nitpick that, and I just had to like, guys, purple pants theory.
It just
You don't ask how Hulk's pants are like You don't ask about Hulk's pants. They're just things. It's like, nope, that happens.
Someone's asking who has tried that egg with bread. Eggy, like we had it this morning.
Yes, I cooked a lot of
Steve
them.
is eating it right now.
It's happening. The yolk gets because I don't cook the yolk all the way through, which might be a problem. I'll move the microphone out of the way.
Well, no, it's not. It's a problem. You just usually you eat that with a knife and fork and.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. So Evie's going into her past here. Again, the past is a little bit altered from the comic.
And to be, if we're gonna be really honest, this is the only part where I was like, all right, guys, you're hitting me over the head. Both of her parents died.
Yeah.
All right, I get, and they were both activists. All right, I get it. She's due for this.
This is very much the expository scene.
Yeah.
One of a few.
Or even just her backstory, you know, like.
Yeah. Yeah. The in the comic, she is also an orphan. She has no sibling. Her mother died. In the comic, there was essentially a nuclear war. Because, again, it was the 80s.
Yeah.
So that was what we were afraid of. And so her mother died during the war. Her father was arrested and then apparently executed later. But in the comic, as she came to know V, she did wonder at times if V was, in fact, her father. And V told her, "I'm not." And Alan Moore said no. But the fact is, it's an open interpretation if you want to take that.
We get the dolls, but we don't get any of the backstory of those dolls.
Yeah, the dolls are a major part in the comic, especially when they're destroyed, bringing this man to the break of sanity. He has a break from reality when his dolls are destroyed and he's attacked. The ego that is apparent in this bathroom. Look how many times his face is in his own bathroom. In the mirrors, in the television, this is just... It's like he's built a temple to himself.
It's also very strange. He doesn't shower for very long. Am I the only one who notices that he's in the shower for like 90 seconds?
This could have been a cut. To
Fair
later.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
It got steamy. All right, but
We don't need to see the entire shower, Steve.
So the one note you have is a longer shower scene,
not necessarily.
just to make it believable.
His one note for Jurassic Park was, I noticed no one took a bathroom break.
Nobody bathed.
Nobody.
No one.
Except for the lawyer, and then that didn't go well for the lawyer. Or Jurassic... Never mind.
Again, the vanity. He's desperately trying to make sure his towel is secure when he's in the midst of a terrorist.
And he's also trying to grab that gold waterproof solid iPhone he has. That's also a remote.
Love it. First flash of what the past looks
So
like.
good.
What we got.
So good. It's almost a Terminator homage. It's so great.
I love how blue collar he is. That his
You know what else? Oh,
his
here's
room looks like a hotel room.
So the other question I had too. I mean, I guess there probably was an alternate plan, but he breaks into his place using her ID badge.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, one, that ID badge gets into this dude's personal home. Two, what if he didn't have her when he formulated this whole thing?
Yeah.
What was the alternate plan? So I always was like, oh, this is just so she could feel betrayed later on when we're watching Count of Monte Cristo. But what was could her badge realistically, she's a low-level intern in a news thing, get her into Protheros?
Well, it's his office, though. It's not his house.
It's his office.
Right.
It's attached to his office. And, I mean, I worked at ABC News for a short while as an intern, and my badge let me into various parts of the place. Because if you needed someone to run and grab something from someone's office, they need to be able to access those doors.
So what you're saying is security is very lax at news organizations. You just have to get to an intern or PA.
Good to know. Good to know.
If you wanna run into Katie Couric.
This is, of course, the Count of Monte Cristo story echoes in V for Vendetta.
Very much. And I'm also going to throw it out there. I like the Jim Caviezel version. I actually really do like that Count of Monte Cristo.
It was a good
fun.
version.
It is not at all the book. Like it's
Oh, no,
it
no.
drastically changes the story, but no, it's a fun movie. And Guy Pearce and Jim Caviezel in a scene together, you can't beat that.
It's really great.
It's good we got to see that.
Let's talk about other movies we like that weren't this.
Yeah.
You've seen Star Wars, right?
Yes. I mean,
Oh, Rupert Graves, I'm just waiting for you to yell at Benedict Cumberbatch in a moment. I do say, as much as I like V, I would get annoyed as hell if he was just quoting a movie alongside.
because it seems like he's quoting the whole movie.
Just like, hey, Dick, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, right?
Do you know what I mean? Like, come on.
Let me know.
Ooh.
Mirroring.
Insight, Evey. Yeah, here he's the voice of London. In the original comic, there's a computer system that controls much of London and really England, and is called Fate. So he was the voice of Fate.
Which by today's standards would just be creepy.
Yes.
Like, she puts this together so fast.
She is actually really a smart, like... Ah, but the way he handles that, though.
It's another aspect of V that is both very liberating and scary. His unapologetic nature. Yeah, I killed him.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but if you ask me, yes.
And I love that he never gets a heart. Like, you'd assume that part of this is him being like, with her character a lot of times in narrative storytelling, her character will give conscience to another character and be the voice of reason. That person, you know, in the last kill scene, they're just like, no, it's about mercy. I don't want to be you, and that just never happens.
No.
And it's awesome.
If anything, it's like, no, I am a monster.
Well,
that's why you're here.
Interestingly, that is kind of what happened in the original draft of a 1980s attempt to make this movie. The ending did wind up with V becoming more human, and I believe with V's identity being revealed.
Ugh.
Just would not have worked. If you know the original story, and especially seeing how well the movie did, it would not have worked. Thank goodness they didn't do that first draft.
Also, time made me forget that they were supposed to release this November 5th, 2005.
Yes.
But then there were bombings in London right around that time that they had changed, and then they bumped it to like the summer. And then it did really well as a summer movie.
Oh yeah.
The colors in this film are also great because in V's lair, the Shadow Gallery, you've got earth tones, you've got oranges and reds. It's a very warm environment. Whereas every time out here, look, this is so sterile and blues and grays everywhere. It's antiseptic. I also love the lighting, that he's actually not very well lit, this character. It's something that happens in a lot of, particularly in TV shows.
Yeah.
They overlight things because they're so scared you won't see the actor, and then it just winds up seeming a little bit unnatural.
Whereas this is masterfully done all the way around, including that
Look
it just...
at this! It's like you're looking at a Caravaggio painting. It's gorgeous.
So, does V have a bunch of dresses that just fit Evey in the Shadow Gallery?
Yeah, it's a little creepy.
Is he also a seamster?
Ooh. See, this seems like a more natural place to bring up how she lost her family.
Like, she shouldn't have mentioned any of it at that.
It's
at
something that
breakfast.
happens in many movies and TV shows. You sort of repeat some information that doesn't need to be repeated. I'm definitely a fan of if you're doing a serious story, trust the audience to pay attention.
So did they shoot riots, like, actually in production and then make
No,
them look like found footage? Or they had to have just
No,
found that
think-
footage?
yeah, I think they
I
found-
believe that's from previous riots in the 80s.
Yeah, like...
I could be wrong, but I believe so.
No, they created.
that would be a
No,
ridiculous
they created
amount.
right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That'd be a ridiculous budget.
I love this.
Oh, the
throughout
mirror-
the whole thing.
oh, man.
Like just that.
Yes. The fingermen making people disappear under a bag.
Yeah, and then like the reveal of her character, or just
Yeah.
being under the bed every time this kind of thing happens, and
So again, it's not an image that repeats often in the comic, but this is the beauty of when you understand how to make a good adaptation and play it to the strength of the medium you're using. There are so many adaptations where they're being so direct, they forget, oh, but we're a movie, we can do things the book or the comic or the musical couldn't do. And they don't take advantage of that.
I would say that about The Watchmen a little.
Yes, The Watchmen was trying too close to be a direct adaptation of the comic for me. And so it was great that you were able to copy, pages and make them into these visuals, but
it's just so many storylines going on without anything really going anywhere.
Yeah.
It just felt like so like
it was detached.
Yeah.
Even here, look at this.
Oh.
Look at this shot. Antiseptic. None of those rooms have freaking labels that are visible.
They're all just tax record rooms.
They're all just these silhouettes that are interchangeable against the antiseptic environment. This is fascism right there in that shot. Now,
And like I think the idea like
they misspell universe on that mirror and in the comic.
So this term we're about to see from Evey. Does anybody else feel a little weird about it?
I think I when I first saw it I was just like oh I could see why I would be. Well, she went so quick, so fast, but I think like this is her she has a plan for her to try and get out of there, which is more of an escape thing. And then I even thought to myself like, well, what is V doing even letting her do this? But we learn later that it was all part of his plan to allow all of that to actually happen. So the time that from when she asked to the time that she did that is basically the time that it took for him to formulate this whole new plan.
And to be fair, she told him, like, her reveal right before that is like, I'm weak.
Yeah.
I'm weak, I'm fearful, and I can't do what you do because of it.
Going back to that story, it's just like, oh, both of her parents were these activists. Her brother was, died in St. Mary's, which was the thing done by this. Like, it's almost like they built her character to be primed to be the person who gets flipped, whereas, like, I think she could have just been somebody who was under this regime for long enough. That she got flipped. I don't think we necessarily needed this whole...
Yeah, which is another thing that in the comic that is more what she was.
Yeah.
She was just someone who saw the point of V's message, but hadn't certainly undergone any grooming for it.
Yeah. Which is the complacency that in the comic he calls everyone out on.
Yes.
Of like, I'm right, and you're not going to do anything. And that should make everybody angry. Like...
Yeah.
Which, if you want them all to just go crazy and do as they please, it's the perfect
Get it.
message.
Get it,
this
V.
shot. Oh.
That shot reminds me. So initially, the creation of V as a character, there was talk about creating a shadow-like character for a political story, and then at one point, Alan Moore talked about creating a character he called the Doll, who would wear a doll's mask. And it was with David Lloyd, the original artist, that they began to form this into the character of V, and that it would be not necessarily a takeoff on the Shadow, but sort of a combination of the Shadow and a Guy Fawkes figure. And the initial sketches were a very more standard superhero look before they finally started on sort of this frock coat and cloak look. And fast forward a few years, fans of the Batman franchises, such as the Arkham video games, the character Anarchy is initially very intentionally ripped off of V.
Really?
And his original costume, the red cloak and golden mask, were directly taken from V's cloak and mask.
By the way, I haven't asked, which Natalie Portman do we find the most attractive from this movie?
Well, this is a creepy scene, so I'm not going to say
I'm not going to say that. You're not going to bait me into this scene.
It's a terribly creepy scene. I
think we're all going to say the bald when she gets shaved bald.
Bald, powerful Natalie Portman.
It's going to be a powerful woman scene.
Yes, no, absolutely. When she truly becomes a warrior and a radical herself.
Although, in 2005, this is something they got way wrong about surveillance. Is that when someone's being surveillance of the future would be like two people in a room listening to you. Like it would be that personal, whereas we now know surveillance is actually, they're just keeping that data so two people in a room can comb through it if they need to find something on you.
Right, it's algorithms.
Yeah,
Twitter and stuff like that.
And it's also privacy we've given up willingly. So if he runs Scotland Yard, Creedy runs like MI6.
MI5. MI6 is international.
Got it. MI5.
MI5 is internal.
So the equivalency to the FBI.
Sort of. It doesn't quite,
it
match
doesn't equate.
up,
Okay.
But that would be the closest equivalency.
Yeah, so he's in charge of the Fingermen, right? So I guess he's just like, he's more like national security.
Yeah, this is if you're going to make an equivalency, like Finch is in charge of public safety and law enforcement, whereas Creedy is in charge of secret police.
Mm-hmm.
He's Gestapo.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that there's also. It's also interesting that they're like around that table. There's not like a general,
right,
or something like that who would
like
be in
a
charge.
Military
Yeah, because
person
we know that there is still war with immigration coming in, trying to prevent them from being a part of whatever, jumping the fence or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's definitely no like general in this, the military head.
So here we have another difference, a couple differences here from the comic. So in the comic, Evey gets away from V not because she takes advantage during the mission, but because she and he have a conversation where V realizes, you think I'm your father, and basically seems to abandon her in the street then, as if to say, I made a mistake, you're not emotionally ready to join me. And so they separate. And then she does wind up with this character, but in the comics, because she doesn't work in a news station, she has now met this character before. In the comic, this is their first meeting, and he's sort of a low-time criminal, and she lives with him for a couple months, and then they began a romantic relationship despite the age difference.
Although this version
I much prefer. It's much more interesting to me.
Much more relatable, much more.
Well, also, it's great to have a positive homosexual character in an action movie, frankly. It doesn't happen often.
And that doesn't define him, because we're at a point now...
It's one aspect of it.
Yeah, like, we're at a point now where you'll find, like, a homosexual character, but that'll define them. It's like, oh, he's a gay guy. Whereas this, it's like, no, he's all of these things and happens to be a homosexual man.
He's a character. He's not there to stand for all homosexuals.
Yeah, he's just...
And I love what he just said about the Quran. That,
yes.
You don't have to understand it to understand that its poetry is moving. Like, it's really, interesting, especially in like a time like the 80s or something like that. Like our idea of terrorism is definitely ethnic, is definitely Middle Eastern, is definitely
and cultural.
all these things, and like the idea that the true a true look at freedom is a complete acceptance of everyone's belief system, not just the one of all, and that like even if you don't agree with something, that doesn't mean it's not beautiful.
Yeah, it's again the comic. It was so focused on the internal politics of England. It didn't speak of the wider world. And again, this is something that makes it, one, I think, a little more relatable to a whole world perspective, and two, made it more topical than it would have been if you only focused on how the comic portrayed things.
And the other thing that I really like about this is that all the black people are dead, and like that's just.
That's
They
they don't
implicitly. They don't implicitly say that.
Yeah,
But,
they're all dead.
They're not there.
And in the comic, it was very clear this was not just a fascist regime, but a white supremacist regime.
So, way to make it. No, I'm kidding.
way to really make it weird.
But it's a lot more subtle here that it's waspy.
No.
That the England that prevailed was the waspy England. The waspy non-monarchy England. They don't tell you how they took down the king.
I don't think it would have taken that much effort.
Yeah. Well, I guess they kind of do. That the Norse Fire Party got elected.
Yeah, but based off of the fact that they had the cure to the
And what a great name for a
that's
group
such a-
too.
oh, I love that name.
Norse fire. It brings to mind the Norse gods. It brings to mind the Ragnarok, the twilight of earth and heaven. Like, yeah.
Just a perfect name for a fear-mongering political party.
No one in this future owns a light, do they?
No.
Everything is lit only by computer screens and televisions. And by the street lamps. Look at this, really.
I'm just gonna leave out this book of exposition here. So if V for Vendetta were a TV series on Sci-Fi,
dude, I'm waiting for it. I think it would be rad.
What week would this happen?
How many episode season?
Week
I would
4 or 5.
Wait, 13? We're saying 13?
I would say 13, but you space it out from November 5th to November 5th.
Okay, so
I think that this is all right. So then I think this is episode. I actually think this is episode 8 or 9.
I would say 6 or 7.
Yeah, and
if it's 13 episodes, 6 or 7.
And then him reading the book would be a whole episode.
Right.
Right.
That would be like 9 or 10.
Like the big reveal
10.
of the character.
Yeah.
Right. Or, because I could also see that as like a huge season break.
Yeah, like that we get the Larkel stuff in like May.
Yeah.
And then they don't come back again till like August.
Right, but
And
then
they
but then
ramp
I
up
would
for
say like
November.
you don't kill Prothero. I would change the order of events, right? Like a little bit.
V would still have to go around killing people though.
Yeah. Oh
Like-
yeah. Oh
Sorry.
yeah, I'm just saying Prothero's a bigger fish than episode what he is at,
Also,
20 minutes in. Yeah.
Also, we would, if this were a TV series, all those people on that screen that just had X's, those would have been weeks.
This is one of those scenes that's almost exactly what
Yes.
the comic book had. And for that I'm glad, because this was actually one of my favorite scenes from the comic.
I think this is awesome. Just to like.
Well, there's a remorse in her.
And I think V legitimately accepts it, but she still has to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
You still have to,
Which is
Sorry.
interesting, and it is balance the scales. And I'm sorry, but and doesn't even allow for the possibility that he'll change, because he has already injected her.
Yeah, he made his choice before she even woke up.
Now this flower, this rose that he leaves as a calling card, here it's called Scarlet Carson, I believe, because they were referring to the color, and they didn't understand why in the comic it's called a Violet Carson. But in the comic, it's not called Violet Carson because of color. It's called Violet Carson because it's named after the British actress Violet Carson, who was often on Oh, I'm forgetting the name. The name of the show she was on now. It was a huge soap opera.
I think they'll give you some credit, being an American.
Coronation Street.
Yep.
It's one of the biggest soap operas in England.
Yeah, that's still happening.
Yeah.
It's that and EastEnders that just don't end.
And the Doc.
Is the Doc a thing that, or Doctor Who? Oh,
Yeah.
Doctor Who. Well, the Doctor Who ended for a minute.
Yes, the wilderness years.
What's so fucked up about this is you're like, that fucking could be, that's like what, in my mind, that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, like,
When I'm out looking. Like, there's just somebody figuring out ways to just
like a.
Yeah.
And we hear this explanation in politics, not in this extreme a case publicly, but there's so many politicians, like, well, you will show a piece of evidence or will refer to a factual thing, a factual document. It's like, well, we can't know if that's verified. It's like, oh, but we do. Like, we told you where it came from, and that is, well, we can't know that. There's always, as long as there's 2% of doubt, in my mind.
Oh, and not to mention that, like, the way we do criminal justice currently, beyond a reasonable doubt, is flawed to begin with.
And I love, I will say this, I love in the diary reading that you hear her utter disdain for these people.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's really, like, because the last thing that you leave is like, man, maybe she wasn't that bad.
And then you read this where it's like,
And
no,
she's
I
just
literally,
like, oh.
It's also
these non-waspy people I had to deal with.
What's also great about that, because there are so many times in movies and in television where when you get to a scene where a character is doing a voiceover narration or they're supposed to be reading from a diary, it's very flat, and they are just reading, they're not acting it. They're not voice actors, they aren't trained to think that way.
They're so weak and pathetic, yeah.
And whereas here, like, no, this is acting. She is you are feeling what she feels through these words. Oh, God. That right here, this is one of those things where this movie does not pull a punch. Like,
no.
God.
Although, could you imagine being, like, an extra in this movie? And they're like, yeah, we just need you naked in a pit.
It's a check.
That's what we're going to do today.
So, right, here we mentioned earlier, this is a change from the comic, that there are anomalies in V's blood. Well, because also these are...
And, like, I guess you never really understand. I mean, it's a neural, like, so the initial virus is something similar to... it's not like an Ebola, right? I mean, it's like a nervous system shutdown.
Right.
Right.
But what it is that they keep trying antidotes.
Right, and so this one antidote has...
Well, they derive the antidote from his blood, because they still have his blood sample before Larkhill gets destroyed. This just...
Even that phrase, the man from room 5, it's so evocative. That's like saying the man in the iron mask. Like, this... He has no identity. He's just the man from room 5. Even she doesn't know the identity. It didn't matter. He was a nameless test subject.
By the way, that sci-fi movie, or that sci-fi series I'm kind of pitching in this room.
The man in the iron mask?
Well, it would be V for Vendetta, but at the episode that they go through this, it would be called The Man in Room 5.
Oh, yes.
And it would be a whole episode. Still without revealing his identity, because that's not important. His identity's MacGuffin.
So, the director, I don't think we brought this up, the director of this film was, I believe, a second unit director or assistant unit director on Attack of the Clones, which is where he met Natalie Portman.
Oh, wow. I actually forgot that connection, that something good did come from that.
By the way, for something that's so hard to get, everyone's just getting butter and cooking it all day long.
Although I would assume he would. And that...
It's pretty funny, Evey. I'm sorry. It's Stephen Fry. It's very funny.
There's something wrong with this country?
Just
So again, this is making it more topical. At the time this movie came out, we were talking about avian flu. There had been scares of anthrax not too long before. Chemical warfare, germ warfare were the new things to fear rather than nuclear attack.
because nuclear attack seems...
That seems very Cold War automatically to my brain.
Well, and...
Isn't that basically also saying, hey, we're talking about, like, if you were to be listening to them right now and it just cut out, wouldn't you also be like, hey, it's like clearing your search history in porn. You know what I mean? It's like the fact that it's not there means you were definitely doing something.
Yeah, you were looking at something bad.
Right. So if I was on surveillance and if I'm John Hurt, I'm surveilling everybody, right? So wouldn't there be a report back being like, hey, on November 1st, it went completely silent in Chief Inspector's office?
That would be kind of interesting. Although I guess it's that idea that they're all at each other's throats, that whoever's surveilling them reports to someone who reports to someone, and the intel doesn't get to John Hurt. Or the intel does, and he's such a small fish.
And this is also, Loose Change, Zeitgeist.
Yeah.
All these movies are coming out where this question that they ask is,
There's like the natural...
If your government was responsible for the biggest terrorist attack, would you want to know about it?
And again, this is something that Alan Moore criticized because he saw this as the movie turned it into Americanizing it because it made it an ideology between liberals versus neoconservatism, conservatism. Whereas, because in this movie, you're right, the government caused this thing in order to assume power in a way it hadn't before. Whereas in the comic, the government took advantage of a situation, i.e. the nuclear war and such, and so a new party stepped in to take advantage of the chaos, which is a different kind of evil, of using terrible tragedy to your advantage. And that's a question that comes up constantly. Would you really want to know? This movie is full of that question. Even just down back to Evey saying, "Did you take my card? Do you want the lie or the truth?" Constantly, people are making the choice of what they want to know. Do they actually want to know the truth? Because if you know the truth, the next question is, what do you do with it? Are you going to act on it? Or are you going to now knowingly return to inaction and become truly directly responsible for things you did not act on?
Red pill, blue pill.
Yeah.
So, does this character not understand the reach of his own government, or does he not care?
Well, he thinks he's bigger than it, right?
I think he thinks he's bigger than being black bagged.
Well, the thing is, we see this constantly happen, and in the 40s and 50s, there were people who spoke out and really thought, well, the people will be enough on me that they'll let me take the piss out of him a little bit. They'll and
also, can we also talk about, like, this would have never made it to air?
Not at all.
I mean, you have to wonder.
Although that's in my mind, Stephen Fry wrote that. Well, I'm aware he didn't.
You have to also wonder, once the head of this network was gone, once the biggest voice piece was gone, is that what allowed them the freedom? Maybe Stephen Fry's character had much more support. Without that head there.
Well, I think that one dude who cut the bomb, who's the head of the news network, I mean, had to have seen the
he would have been aware. It's curious. Did they have a conversation about it and decide, well, we have a good enough relationship with them, we can play with it, or what?
It's interesting. Like,
they could have, maybe they justified it as like, no, we're mocking V, so this is actually very pro-government.
That is interesting that he somehow pitches.
Or that it even gets to this point, right? Like, you just the
Sutler's not picking up the phone right now
I
and telling them,
And
like,
said-
don't show
right,
this.
Right,
This is
right.
insulting.
This is off now.
Right. I'm sure at some point they've allowed them to take the piss out of some government officials because again, I don't see
because in a world
this
where
type of fascist regime lasting too long if they don't do it otherwise.
yeah, like
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that, like, for the purposes of this movie, it's a thing. But I'm just saying, in the real,
No, it would be interesting to see explored more behind the scenes. What was the conversation that
Yeah.
led to this?
but like these cutaways you see of the regular people would be way more shocked and not laughing if this were a world where no one was able to do this. But Dietrich generally thinks that he'll just get in like a slap on the wrist trouble.
I mean, it's him calling himself. I mean, like, there's no way he was like, "Yo, don't worry, I'm making fun of V."
Yeah, it's like, no, you're literally having people shoot both chancellors, and then you're saying V is alive, which we established in the scene earlier. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, this right here. I mean, this is a security a lot of people will feel that you know I've become important enough now I can speak out, and I'll have to be fined. I'll have to take punches, but someone has to speak out, and I'm secure enough that I can do this. I think he's taken because of his celebrity status. He doesn't think he can just be disappeared.
Like OJ.
Although he also... But also, I think V kind of inspired him, and the fact that he's not living his truth kind of inspired him.
Yeah.
And then having Evey there, like, I think a lot of that came into his... Because... that in his mind, he's doing his small part to trying to change the narrative.
Not so funny now. Funny man.
So you're saying that Evey would run away from the church and wind up at Dietrich's house was all part of V's plan?
I mean, I think it has. Yeah, I do.
That's...
I don't know. I think this is where we fall more into synchronicity. I think.
Yeah.
I think
he knows...
V-
He sees that on the TV and knows that they're coming for him.
Oh, I think.
And he's probably there to help her.
No, I think V tracked her down and has been aware that she's been staying there.
Fair enough.
I don't think was his plan of this is who she will seek out for comfort. I think he just made sure to know where she went.
All right, so here's what I think. I think it's a combination of the two. Based off of the comic book, he abandons her, right? Mm-hmm. Because she doesn't want him to think that she's a father figure. In this one in particular, it makes it look like she gets away on a mission. What I'm saying is he knew she was going to take this opportunity to run.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And I do actually believe that he knew that she would go to the only person that she could potentially trust. Because I believe V over 10 years would have looked into this guy and said, hey, I know exactly what this dude's about, and he's probably the only one that she could trust. When he found out she was there, he was like, he abandoned her with somebody who could replace him as that father figure, is what I'm saying.
Also,
the other... Yeah, I was going to... Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Does anyone else envision the Robot Chicken-like sketch where she goes, oh, the color of the stone is this. It's underground. Get me out of here. And then it's all... And then he's like, Evey, it was me, though.
It was me. Well,
Ow!
As somebody who knows about, who knows about lighting...
Also, this scene people get very irked about. Because that's clearly not V. Like, that's clearly a different person.
Oh,
shaving
really?
her head.
We're bothering to worry about that?
I'm just saying...
F that.
I'm not saying me. I'm saying that...
Whatever.
Well, for me, the thing is if you know about lighting, even on the darkest of days, he could never have blacked out his whole...
Oh, no.
Of course
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that because again, it's an artistic license of the medium. It's like with comic books when characters are able to stay in silhouette and not be revealed to the person they're talking to. Deep Throat. Deep Throat is a great example of, just artistic license of the lighting. I love this. Just that they really she has her head shaved on camera. It's a for real head shave, which you have to do in one take.
But I want this. I want this like the camera guy just going, Terry, battery's dead. Terry,
we didn't get it.
We didn't get any of it.
We'll fake it in post. Shut up.
We have to fake it now.
Battery Aziz.
So on a first viewing, of the three of us, who was fooled?
Well, I'd read the comic, so
okay.
I knew what was happening.
No.
You weren't fooled either?
No.
Okay, so 1 and 3. But when I watched this film, I was like, oh, they got her.
Yeah.
You had faith in V.
In hindsight, it would make way more sense that V got her, because that's what the whole story. The story wasn't about her getting, like, that would have been a sidetrack.
And now the discovery of Valerie's note, which is one of my favorite parts of the entire saga, both comic and movie. You feel for Valerie, Paige.
I mean, it's also the strongest toilet paper I've ever seen in my life.
Well, I mean, that just goes to show you, again, the torturous existence that these people live in.
Yeah.
Of
single ply.
Of single
what kind
ply.
of sick, fucked up...
It's really, they're being forced to use parchment as toilet paper. These poor people.
I still don't get the 3 seashells. Has anyone? All right. I get the scraping, but there's so much. Do you recycle them? All right.
I read a really weird thing that kind of explained it, and it was it went more into that if Taco Bell won the fast food wars, everyone would have way more fiber in their diet, so they'd be like their stools would just be looser. So loose, in fact, that the 2 of the seashells were just to take the poop out. And you don't actually poop.
This is really what you want the commentary for, folks.
Yeah. This is the real deal.
Because I mean, if we did,
and I, you know what I will say. One of the things about this that is like, I don't want to by any means say it's. I'm happy to see the lesbian fight for approval. Because I feel like a lot of times when we think the disapproving of homosexuality, we definitely see it toward men.
Right.
And like the idea that like if it's really easy for lesbian, they're way more accepted. But like to actually show that it can destroy another person's life is very interesting and very awesome.
She is seen as less than human, and she pays for who she chooses to love with her life.
Hey, man, get my face out of this toilet, man. What the fuck is wrong with you? That's the first thing I would have said when V was like, when it was like, hey, it was me the whole time. Like, you put my face in the toilet, V? Fuck is wrong with you?
I shouldn't say chooses to love, like who she loves.
Sylvia Love in the chat is saying that there's some hard toilet paper out there.
Yeah, no, they are correct. This is fun. So the crew you see in the background of this scene,
actual crew,
is the actual crew of V for Vendetta. Oh, Ruth, I fell in love with Ruth.
I fell in love with this whole thing.
Look at her. She's so dapper. And the beautiful...
When I first saw it, I will say, from right there, I was like, is that Naomi Watts?
The orange curtains behind them reminded me of... in New York, for several months, there was an art installation called The Gates, where all the paths were decorated by these large orange structures and curtains. It was gorgeous.
Well, that's another Americanization where it's like America's war grew worse.
We started it.
It's us.
Yeah. We started it.
Sorry.
Way to go, US. Way to go.
So what you just saw there, that shot, that is when you zoom in and pull back, it creates that vertigo expansion.
Yeah, the Hitchcock effect.
The Goodfellas. There are a couple very famous that I'm just...
the meaning of words begin to change. This is another thing that.
How long was that? I mean, it looked like she could have read that like in like 20.
Well, I feel like she's weak.
I think she's rereading.
Yeah.
Well, both that she's rereading it and that it looks like they're only giving her one crappy meal a day. That she might.
But
she might not have enough strength to stay awake to read the whole thing in one shot.
They took her while she was buying food. Again, just the choice of how these people are victimized. Like, not when she spoke against a cop, not when she was buying food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are these vampires that just come down and prey on you. And I apologize to no one. Again, that's a quality V has. And someone brings up in the chat room, I'm sure the Wachowski siblings also had a connection to this story in that.
Oh yeah.
You know, certainly in this society, transgender people would be targeted as well.
Oh,
But yeah, this part of the comic book was one of my favorites. It's just beautiful. Breaks my damn heart.
Yeah.
Breaks my damn heart.
Like that was the first part in the whole movie that we all just went, nope.
No, we're gonna let that go.
Someone in the chat room asked where did she get a pencil. She's not using a pencil. She's using her crap.
Yep.
Literally. She's
feces.
She's using
she let her feces dry and then used it like a crayon.
Yeah.
That's what the Constitution was written with.
Feces crayon.
Feces,
and
feces,
crayon.
and a crayon. Dookie crayon. Brought to you by Crayola. Dookie.
This reveal. It's that quiet strength she has now. She doesn't yell no. It's like, look, no.
I think I'd rather go behind the chemical shit. So that's just Hugo being Hugo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you can kind of hear it. Like, you don't have any fear anymore. Like, the accent kind of breaks.
Yeah.
Just looking like a little Tibetan baby. Just like a little Tibetan baby who's just learning how to walk for the first time.
That's the name of my next album.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Little Tibetan Baby Learning How to Walk for the First Time.
Yeah, just going.
Volume 1.
Although I think it would be really... Really acting out that Tibetan baby.
Yeah, just that.
Really?
That mannequin's creepy.
And gorgeous at the same time.
No,
You're like,
but that's what makes it creepy.
yeah, it's just his eyes are so beautifully blue and piercing.
He's so pretty.
And the extra added effort to, like, Sharpie in a scruff on that mannequin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's a lonely guy, is
Well,
what
the
I'm
other
saying.
thing, too, is, like, can we talk, where are we? Because I know we're in the underground railway tunnel.
Right.
He has...
But why are there cells down there?
She lived there long enough to
have been like, oh,
to
there's
have
some
found
cells.
that door. Although, does anyone else think she would have sat in her cell for like a couple hours, just confused?
I mean, the comic, it really feels like she's there for at least like an hour, like at least
Yeah.
several minutes before she takes the chance to walk out.
Where it's just because she has to still believe that she's captive by the government.
Yeah, so even V didn't expect them to kill Diedrich. Like
So-
he thought he would just be arrested and that it would be a public thing and maybe political pressure would let him out or not. But the Quran, not even that he believed in that other religion,
That he owned
but that he had an artifact of another religion, got him executed.
Also, but that shows he's not this master planner either. that
Right,
he
he's
was-
not omnipotent.
He just knew that she was there. He didn't know that he's secretly gay and has a Quran and
Right.
and God Save the Queen, which I'm assuming is now destroyed, which is a shame. On just that subtle guitar under all this.
To yell in a British accent, so hard.
Ugh.
To stay that committed in it, you know?
I really love this moment here that it is essentially giving her a nervous breakdown. The truth is overwhelming. All the ideas and thoughts and feelings, processing them, is overwhelming.
After you watch a movie like this, like, how long does it, like for like 2 weeks, are you like, I'm free, man. I'm going to tell people what I want to say.
I did
I'm going to
it.
come from a place of honesty and truth. And then, like, after 2 weeks, you're just like, yeah, I'm going to go to IKEA and get a. I'm going to go to IKEA
Oh, crap.
and build a coffee table and just get right back into the sheep that I am, dude.
There's a sale at Best Buy
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
This is another interesting thing about V. There are so many revenge stories and other similar tales where the character cuts off emotions and advises other people to do the same. And V is actually asking her to feel everything right now, to connect with emotions and the pain she just felt. I want you to remember that and acknowledge that and accept it. And here symbolically. I love this because you also have a twist on how Evey will be different than V. V, after he read the note from Valerie and had his own escape, is reborn in fire and vengeance, and he has a vendetta in his mind. Evey has her rebirth in water at night and
Well, because her birth was in her birth is water, his birth was fire.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
You're twisting, and therefore you're showing that she will follow a different path. And indeed she does. She chooses, perhaps a more balanced, less angry path.
Mm-hmm.
And in this instance, rather, while V was all consumed with vengeance, she is bringing herself to forgive V for everything that she's gone through. And perhaps herself for surviving when her family did not.
Which is an incredible amount of forgiveness. Like, I don't know if I could forgive him immediately.
No, I'd be pissed for a while.
It would take me a
Like
really
I said, I'd be
long...
like, hey, man, was that toilet water?
Yeah.
Like, hey, bro, where was that? Like, look,
Do you
dude,
notice every number on the jukebox is 5?
Of course. But I do like Warner Brothers being Warner Brothers is able to fit in. They're like, nope, let's find a song we own and want to promote, and just put it on that Wurlitzer. Not hating on the song, I love all the songs on that Wurlitzer.
So this song is "I Found a Reason" by Cat Power. Which, I mean, that title is very evocative of this scene. Yeah, the fact that he even has this little shrine to a woman who he never technically met.
Or that he really didn't meet.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah, like-
they never met.
And they created a monster.
What he mentioned earlier in the film about dancing, there's a famous Emma Gordon quote. She was an anarchist and a free thinker in the early 20th century, and at one point she was criticized for dancing at a party because it was seen as not the visual that a woman of her political attributes and position should do. And a revolutionary doesn't dance, basically. And she gave this short speech about how that was silly to her, and why would you be part of a revolution that didn't embrace dancing? And so when they talk about that speech, they usually paraphrase it into one phrase as such as, "I'm not interested in your revolution if I can't dance," or "A revolution without dancing is a revolution not worth having," which is what V paraphrases in this movie. Again, here we see a much more human V than in the comic, one who has plans but can't account for everything, and perhaps is really regretful of the pain he caused Evey.
Well, I think he's regretful that he's not human. Like, what humanizes him is that he's regretful that he's not human.
Yeah, he recognizes he has become a bit of a monster.
Yeah. Who do you think?
It's again, so we're seeing this theme of accepting feelings, not cutting them off. Finch has a feeling that V would use a train for his plot, and this is dismissed. And V is constantly telling Evey and other people, you have to accept your feelings. You have to listen to your feelings and your instincts. You can't cut them off.
And also just fear driving it, driving it home.
Just pure bush.
Oh, John Hurt, you're so good. So good.
Isn't he doing something really cool right now?
I'm sure he is.
Yeah, he's like water skiing, right?
The man's John Hurt.
Yeah. Isn't he doing something cool right now? No. Yeah, he's water skiing while replicating the Mona Lisa in midair.
Someone's going to draw that. So, wait, so no one's upset about those people that they executed for St. Mary's, where it's like, oh, wait.
So again, what does the media choose to focus on?
Yeah. Just, fear. So Finch just goes into his spam folder, and is like, oh wait, he sent me an email.
Why is it that in movies so
Or it's not even Rockwood. It's just it's just like.
But I mean, like in movies, so often whenever they check email, and first of all, again, dating this movie,
Yeah.
you know, the Dell computer, but whenever they check email, there are sound effects in email that I've never had in any of my real emails. Just scrolling through emails would give like.
By the way, this episode of this 13-part sci-fi series that I'm pitching in the room.
This would be half an episode. This conversation.
Yeah. Well, but this would be the end half of the episode,
Right.
because the next 3 episodes are like revolution.
Yeah.
You just need some.
So the device he
Oh,
just turned on, is just one of those book lights that you can get,
Okay.
and they just put a
It's-
red
yep.
light on it to make it look sci-fi. He actually, I don't know if this is intentional, but to me he looks a little bit more like Alan Moore right here in this scene with his big beard disguise.
Well, there was within the Gunpowder plot, there was an actual man named Rookwood.
Oh yes, yes,
Yeah, like-
yes.
Then I think he looks like him, but he looks very much like Alan Moore as well. I don't know the timeline exactly. When did Alan Moore read an early draft of the script and want his name off it, or did he wait till they made the movie?
No. Remember before this movie, they had made adaptations of From Hell and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So between that and his understanding that they weren't going to adapt his story directly, that they were going to do a slight modernization, that they would change it. That plus his previous bad experiences with movie adaptations on his own work made him decide, no, I won't have anything to do with it. They're not doing my story; they're doing their own story. In which case, I don't care.
I mean, I sold them the rights.
Yeah, I mean, because it was a DC Comics story. And David Lloyd, the artist and co-creator, was fine with this movie and supported it, and thought they did a very good way of making it topical again.
Although I have read Alan Moore's main criticism of the film is that it just shouldn't have been that it was so Americanized that it should have just been in America. But no, the only problem is Guy Fawkes isn't that big a deal in America.
Yeah,
like at all. But what's also funny is Guy Fawkes isn't that big a deal in the comics.
Yeah, but the other thing too is America's too big, whereas London feels controllable,
Yeah, like United
manageable,
King- yeah, like-
isolated. This one
The
area,
UK, yeah.
like unless where it's like the streets of the UK of London could be
You know
empty and have you know what I mean? Like,
No, what also helps is that England and all, the UK is essentially an island plus Northern Ireland. So it's immediately there's a greater visual of it being isolated, whereas the United States, you've got Canada and Mexico bordering it, and so it changes the playing field of how much a country can really be isolated.
Definitely. I couldn't imagine this story taking place in another country. Like, it would just be a different.
I was waiting for you.
So the Scotland Yard guy can put the head of essentially the national security agent. He can put him under surveillance.
Well, you can
Probably
argue that
with-
it should be
with-
done.
Police officers.
Yeah. Although it's clear as it didn't have to be for very long.
So this is also a joke the Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. One, it's the Fifth Symphony, but two,
That's Morse code for
the opening.
5.
Yeah, the opening notes. Da 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 da. That's Morse code for V.
I like this Creedy character the best, like,
Creedy's a great character.
because it's the idea of like this smart, like
Goon?
like a Dick Cheney type.
He's a smart thug.
Yeah,
yeah.
but he's still a thug. Where it's like, what do I get out of this deal? You've got a karate gimmick.
It's a very nice cockney you've got going on.
Do what I can.
Hey. Oh, you meant... Oh, never... I thought that was proposition.
Oh, wait. Oh. And then, of course, the put an X on your door illusion to Larkill, where everyone who died had an X on their door.
Yeah. And it's,
Can we also
it's a
talk about,
biblical
like,
illusion.
is it just easy to just, like, get an apartment? And get, like, it's like, I don't know.
Does she work?
Like, do you have a
she get-
job?
Why do you have a 30-year-old television by your timeline?
Yeah, I mean, like,
You can afford a television, but you have 2 cinder blocks.
you're the most wanted woman in the last year, and now you just got your own lease, and, like...
Shave your head. Shave your head and be imprisoned.
It'd be great if that's just the apartment above the Shadow Gallery. She's just renting the place above.
I left here. I'll never be back.
Yeah, except above.
By the way, I need a roach person. You need to call him.
I love how cool Rupert Graves is. Like, he is like, yes, we were tricked. That sucks. What do we do now?
Let's move forward.
Let's continue our pursuit. That kid is loosely based on a young girl who does appear in the comics, and in a scene where V has killed the CCTV cameras for a couple days. She takes a great joy in being able to say bollocks to a camera and not be immediately reprimanded.
Similar to Demolition Man. It all comes back to Demolition Man.
I mean, I think we're all in agreement that it is a failing of this movie that Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes were not in it.
Well, Wesley Snipes was a little busy.
I
In
mean,
2005.
you're not gonna. There's not a world where I'm not gonna believe that V still isn't Wesley Snipes.
Oh.
Okay, that's the truth.
You know what? V can still be Wesley Snipes. Also, for a government that has their thumb on everything, you can somehow get away with shipping things freely.
Best. Oh God.
So the domino scene involved 4 professional domino assemblers over 200 hours setting up 22,000 dominoes for this scene.
That's another thing where it's like, hey Terry, battery died, man. We got to set that back up.
Can you just set up all the dominoes again? I feel like at some point in your life there was a
Or
Terry.
like they all went, and then it was just like, wait, 20,220 flipped, and then one didn't. They're like, God damn.
Also, no acid trip for Finch.
That's right. In the comic, Finch visits the Larkhill facility and takes LSD in sort of a way to like connect with the spirituality of the place and trying to get into V's head.
Well, the other thing too that's I mean, like just this like, all right, we need to get from A to C really quickly.
Yeah.
Let's just have him talk us through it.
And
Yeah.
what's interesting is not only do we see some stuff that happens in the future, but right there we just saw a clip that does not appear later in this film.
Yeah.
Where Evey is home and Finch is evidently sitting in her apartment, wherever she is.
Yeah.
And so does that mean they become friends after the events of this movie? Do they begin a relationship?
That seems to be the future after the Rolling Stones credits. That it's like, no, I live with her now. That's.
But see, again, feeling, and you know, V would consider everything he talked about to be a vision. He dismisses it like, no, man, it was just a feeling.
Also, did this There's a lot of debate. This actually happened, right?
Yeah.
How do we feel?
So.
Okay.
I believe so, and I think it's sadly this movie, 10 years later, is becoming topical again for me in terms of how police, at least certain police, abuse their authority.
Although that scene's very powerful today.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like this, with things such as Ferguson, this scene of police shooting kids in the street just for spray painting a wall is very evocative. Yeah, player. V is the domino master. How long did it take V to set this up, just for his own amusement?
He did it 10 years ago. Is it taking 10 years? And she was like, when Evey was there, she's like, "Can I go into the? Don't open that door.
Don't
ever go in.
Don't even breathe in that room.
Into that room.
I have 22,000 dominoes set up, but I'm not gonna do anything until the middle of October."
Like I spent all this time setting it up, and once I set it down, but one domino does not fall. Once again, V is not omniscient. There's always something he doesn't account for.
I wonder if he rides a train later.
This song does seem to be foreshadowing things, as many of the songs here seem to do.
But I'll say again, his bedroom looks like a hotel room. He has no things.
He's a Spartan person. Just again, these beautiful earth tones. Like it really does look like a Rembrandt or a Caravaggio painting.
I will also say this is my second favorite version of Crimea River. Because Michael Bublé kills one. Like, if you've never heard the Michael Bublé Crimea River.
Or the Justin Timberlake.
Oh, well.
You know.
I mean, that's a different...
No.
Let's not dismiss JT.
Listen, if you want to throw out your versions, I want to be open to all Crimea Rivers, okay?
Everyone who ever said Crimea River in a song.
Yeah.
So, did she take some art from the Shadow Gallery and then pawn it to get money to buy a fake ID? I know that's not important to the story, but I would like to see her harrowing tale.
I wonder if V
That'll
gave
be
her a
episode
little.
11.
Yes.
I mean, it would be conceivable that maybe V gave her a little money to start out with. I mean, because you also are like,
'Cause, I mean,
how does V have all of them?
I mean,
yeah.
I did stick your head in a toilet, so here's a C note.
It's just like, here's a C note. But like, what does it cost to mail everyone in England a Guy Fawkes mask and order them? And where do you even order them? Who got that order and was like, this is probably nothing?
Yeah, who got that order but can't track down the person who made the order?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and put this on.
So speaking of the masks, in the comic, if you look, the David Lloyd, the artist, occasionally changes details of the mask in order to fit with certain atmospheres and certain scenes. And they did talk about doing that in the movie, that in certain scenes maybe the expression would be slightly different and it would be artistic license. And they just decided to abandon it because it was too hard to keep track of the continuity and the props.
Well, and they light the mask really well to serve the exact same effect.
Yeah, exactly. It's by no means was that a failing on their part. It works beautifully.
Why is the propaganda guy asking that?
Propaganda guy is thinking about the bad PR if the terrorist succeeds, so that totally makes sense to me.
Okay.
So
Disco ball?
Disco ball.
Little disco ball? Like nothing in a secret layer, like a sweet disco ball.
So V just quoted Twelfth Night, which involves a woman disguising themselves as a man. And one of the original ideas that Alan Moore was kicking around apparently was that when he was talking about creating a character called the Doll rather than V, was for a transgender terrorist. And it was one of these initial ideas that got thrown out later. I mean, we actually
1985, that would be. Or was that later?
It was this was before 82.
Oh, wow.
Because the comic really started in 82. But it's one of those things where, we know so little about V. You could give anything about him. He could be a transgender woman. He could be, gay. He could be asexual. He could,
He could be Dennis Rodman.
He could be Dennis Rodman. We don't know.
And it's full circle. So what I've been trying to drive home to you guys is that other than the fact that Double Team did not get the success that it deserved, I think we can all agree that Dennis Rodman is the best action star that has come out of the 90s.
When I see a movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme that Dennis Rodman is not in, I just think, well, what's the point?
What's the goddamn point?
Why even bother? It could have taken 5 years to clean the tracks if I hadn't also set up those dominoes and decorated my crib with all this artwork and jukeboxes and whatnot.
Okay. And invested in Viodoxin Pharmaceuticals so I'd have all this money.
Do you know how difficult it was to get that poster of the Salt Flats?
Yes.
Okay.
That was a year of my life by itself. But it really holds the room together.
So we can all agree that V, in the 10 years that he was doing this, his eBay account was off the charts, right?
Craigslist
he's a top buyer, right? All right.
He spent most of his days tracking down weird stuff.
It's just about time management, really. That's the unspoken moral of this movie. You need better time management.
And this is really clear because there's a difference between him showing mercy and him realizing that revolution isn't him, that the vendetta's him. Yeah. And that's like the most, I don't know, I just love that clarification that it's not it has to be the people who make the choice, not me. My whole point of this is what I'm about to go deal with.
Well, and it underlines his belief that he is no longer a human being, really, that he is this monster outside of society. So therefore, I cannot make the choice for society of whether you wish to embrace anarchy or freedom from this government or to continue. I was so nervous during this whole movie that they were going to take off his mask. Because that was so important to me that they not do that.
Yeah.
That we never, like in the comic, we never see who
That's
he
his
is.
face. That is his face.
Yes. This is the identity he's adopted, which again goes to a theme not only in this movie, but in a lot of heroic tales, certainly in a lot of superhero versions, superhero stories, that you choose your identity. You choose the face you will wear in the world.
But also just that strict illusion of, like, you would ask, like, oh, well, why would she be kissing a mask? Like, what does that mean? And it's like, well, everyone...
Because that's where the movie doesn't hold together. That's the one
I
silly
know,
element
that's
of the movie.
the one that... But
I was totally into everything else, but kissing a mask.
If you really scan the comments, someone has said that.
Yeah. Thank goodness our Popcorn Talk commenters are smarter.
They are.
They really are. This effing scene right here. This is the scene.
This is the scene, man.
So
I will say this. This next part right here, I never felt this was the only part that I was like, oh, you guys just got him? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like,
there was no, like...
Not to say that he wasn't being watched by Creedy's men anyway, and they have a loyalty to Creedy's men and all that stuff, but like...
Right.
And that he was a bit of a puppet.
Right. It's just like, it really is...
But he also set up this defeat himself. He told Creedy, you get me. Now, before the action starts, I want to point out Hugo Weaving stunt double, David Leitch. The way they did this scene, as we're about to see, they do film it with slow motion cameras, yes. But on top of that, David Leitch was moving at a fast speed while all the people around him that he's fighting were deliberately moving slower than they normally would. So combining them moving slow with him moving fast with slow motion cameras, you truly get this great effect of the battle.
It's just like, oh.
This, too, is very different from the comics.
That's done. That was, you know what I mean? Not that it was, it's just like...
In the comics, he's assassinated by a side character who has had her own story during this saga and is not at all directly involved with V. Also, he has a different last name in the comic. His last name is Susan in the comic. This is where you can see the Wachowski influence.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Also, V is not a man of his word. Never claims to be.
I love that. Oh, the dialogue in this movie.
Round your neck. Karate. It's the way it's like when a British person says karate, it takes the tension right out of the scene for me. And your karate tricks.
Your karate gimmicks. Like, wait, you mean an ancient form of hand-to-hand combat? A gimmick? Oh, this scene.
And also, what's that mask made out of? Like, that mask got some ricochets on it. Like,
it's definitely not the plastic one Warner Brothers will sell you.
with your knives and your fancy karate tricks.
Again, they made V more of an action hero, whereas in the comic, his final confrontation is with Finch, where he stabs Finch and Finch shoots him, and that's what it comes down to.
Oh, love it.
But the definite Wachowski influence, definite Matrix influence.
Oh, absolutely.
And like when I spoke earlier about there are two types of fans of this movie. There are like the thinker, like people who are thinking and like really judging the film as a whole. But then there are Matrix fans who are just like, this scene though. Like that scene with the knives and he like the blood was everywhere.
And I dig movies that can go for both of those audiences.
Yeah. Because the crossover, you get a lot of bros who wind up thinking about.
And I love that he gets these last ones off here.
Oh yeah. Because I'm an idea.
And this line is from the comics.
Mm. I just wanted you to know that before you die.
I mean, Creedy's pushing 245, 250. Like, all right.
Well, we didn't get to see the gym in the Shadow Gallery.
Yeah.
That's there.
Even V needs armor, man.
Yeah.
V is not. He's an enhanced human, but he's not superhuman. He's not Superman. So this is, for me, one of the... see, 11:05. That makes it the 5th of November, and it's a giant V. But yeah, so here, the climactic moment of the movie is blowing up Parliament and symbolizing we're now free of the government.
Yeah.
Whereas in the comic, that's actually one of the first buildings he blows up.
Yeah.
And in the final scene, the climax is blowing up 10 Downing Street, which is where the Prime Minister has his offices and lives. This is the relationship between Evey and V is always up for debate between fans. Is this a father-daughter relationship? Is this mentor-protege? Is this partners? Is there some form of romantic love happening? And I think everyone can take their own version of that. What works?
And it works. You know, both ways. However,
absolutely,
it is.
absolutely. I think that's one of the beauties of this, is that you can take it the way you wish, in the same way that you can decide whoever is behind the mask that appeals to you. And here in the comic, there was an interesting montage where she considers taking off his mask, and you have this montage of so many different faces it could be.
Yeah.
Male and female, of different ages.
Male, female, different races,
Yeah.
different sexual orientation. Like,
Right, and
pretty
deciding,
much anyone that would be locked
Right.
up in this world.
Right, whereas here we reinterpret that, where we have an army of V-masked people. And so they represent that V is indeed not one person, but an idea.
Mm-hmm. That said, I'm not telling Anonymous to not wear V for Vendetta masks. I am saying don't give Warner Brothers money. Just you're being counterintuitive.
Dude, just marching over there, going. I can't see anything in this. Like, I just don't. It's claustrophobic. I'm down with the cause, but could he? And like, how big is this domino piece? It's so big.
It's sort of like when people take Fight Club way too seriously. Like, yeah, Fight Club was right. Like, okay, 1, Tyler Durden's the bad guy.
Yeah.
2, Fight Club was produced by a major motion picture studio that you're giving money to.
Also, what? Remember the Fight Club video game?
I do not.
Don't do it. It was because Fight Club was about as anti-capitalist as a movie made by a major motion picture, a major studio can be.
So here, again, it's a conversation we don't get in the comic. Evey just becomes V and takes over the cause and does this whole thing herself. Here we get her defiantly saying why she's doing this, and also she's not doing it as V. She's doing it as herself.
Whereas in the
which
comic,
I think is a stronger message, actually.
Dun, 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 dun.
Here's another thing that really is striking us again today. Marches. Marches of the people peacefully standing off against armed policemen. I mean, that's Ferguson. That's hell. You go back to Selma.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we advance, the only true change that happens through peace.
Yes.
You know, higher consciousness.
Revolution of ideas.
Right.
And that the destruction isn't violent.
This is a Viking funeral.
Yeah.
Which is how I've already. That's how I want to go.
Oh, me too, dude.
That's how you've settled your...
Yeah.
My affairs have been. I've nothing else settled.
Flaming
Just that one thing. Nothing else settled.
All the bills.
Yeah. None of that settled.
Anyone else can handle that.
Right.
But damn it, there's gonna be someone with a flaming arrow. I love Parliament blowing up is also visually, cinematically a more effective scene.
Yes,
for
than
how
10
this,
Downing.
Yeah, this. That's another thing. Like even in the comic, you actually don't see the explosion of 10 Downing. You just see Evey notice the light of the explosion in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the movie, so here she is with Finch.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the end of the comic, she finds Stone, his partner,
Yeah.
and brings him to the Shadow Gallery. And so there's an implication of either she will explain her story now that she is V, or that she will begin training him as V trained her.
Meaning capture him,
Yeah.
waterboard him.
Sure.
Give him that note. Make sure he sees that note.
I mean, just maybe if you started with the note.
That here, who was he? And all the possible answers and everyone. He's an idea.
He's all of us. He's me.
And MacGuffin. He was MacGuffin, is what you're saying.
I love that we see some of the dead characters in
yeah.
the story here.
Including, you see Hugo Weaving very briefly.
Yeah. Seeing Valerie breaks my damn heart.
I owned a bootleg copy that ended on that Hugo Weaving part.
Really?
So I missed a bunch of these
Stephen
and the
Fry.
Rolling Stone song at the end.
Oh, my emotions.
What's weird is they had to shoot that first. Or she wore a wig.
What?
Yeah,
For
you're
Valerie.
right. Because she has
Oh,
the head
yeah,
shape.
She would have had the hair.
Well, movies are rarely shot in order.
Yeah.
Well done, James McTeigue.
All
And-
right, James McTeigue.
And Wachowski siblings, well done.
Yes. Based on the graphic novel illustrated by David Lloyd. And no one else.
And published by Vertigo DC Comics. Yep. Well done. What a solid damn movie.
Every time.
Every
He'll
time.
never disappoint.
I'm always impressed by this movie.
And this movie, and look at other movies made in 2005.
They're all crap.
Like Domino.
Like,
like Domino.
but it's actually very rare for a film in general to hold up. Even to 10 years.
Especially political
Oh yeah,
films.
like a big statement film.
Yeah,
like
we're
this.
never gonna watch the King's Speech again.
Well, I mean, it's interesting if it's not really done as a period piece. So many of them really feel so much a part of their times that even if you like it, you still. You
Or
see
I mean,
it through
or
that
if there isn't a
lens.
truth to it, right? If there isn't like Hotel Rwanda or
Right.
something
You
like
still,
that.
you
Yeah,
see
yeah.
it through a detached lens of, oh yeah, that's what we were all concerned about back then. And this one's like, no, this remains topical as far as I'm concerned, and which is extremely sad. Yeah. Excellent film. Thanks.
Excellent.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Popcorn Talk people, if you want us to do more, let us know. Someone suggested we watch Children of Men.
Ooh, I would love to do Children of
that's
Men.
a good one.
I'd be down for Children of Men.
Are we the dystopian?
Yeah.
The dystopian British futures?
You guys want to blow ping pong balls in each other's mouths? Is that cool? You guys want to just blow ping pong balls in each other's mouths until the movie's done? We'll just keep doing that.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here
Yes.
for the watch along.
Yes.
Thank you.
For V for Vendetta.
Wonderful.
Sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. In the meantime, you want to tweet at us, let us know what movies you'd like to see us do a watch-along for. You can find me at Steve Kaufmann, that is Kaufmann. I do a lot of stuff over at the sister network to Popcorn Talk, AfterBuzz TV, and I tweet about them regularly. I started to my left, so I'll start to my right on the way out.
Hey, Bill Posley, want to say thanks for having me here. I'm at Bill Posley on pretty much everything. So thank you guys so much. This is the best movie of all time. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I'm Alan Kistler. You can find me at Kistler on Twitter. You can find archives of my work at alankistler.com. The podcast is Crazy Sexy Geeks on SoundCloud and iTunes. Look for my books, the unofficial Game of Thrones cookbook, and the New York Times bestseller, Doctor Who, A History.
Good. And thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.